If you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
Hi guys, and thanks for coming to my channel and being with us today. I'm very happy to be here today with Liz Gale. I'm sorry, it's been a morning. I'm still trying to gather myself. I'm here with Liz Gale, ex-Scientologist pothead.
Yep.
Yep, and author of Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist Pothead. I've done my homework. I have my tabs. We're going to dig in. We're going to ask some questions. Before we do, Liz, for the people that have been living under a rock for the past few years and don't know who you are. I mean, I first became aware of you on your episode on the Aftermath show, which I really felt a connection to, having, experienced, my own grief and trauma and Scientology and so forth. I was still in when I watched it, but I was, on that slow motion train wreck leaving Scientology. And I watched it during COVID. I became aware of that. I followed you on TikTok, read your book. We've never met in person. This is the closest we've ever had to an actual meeting. But for those people who've been living under a rock for the past few years, why don't you just give us a brief introduction?
Okay. So I'm honored that you have followed me so closely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You deserve it. So
That's kind. So hi, everybody. I'm Liz Gale. I was raised as a third generation Scientologist, and that was my path for a long time. I ended up having children, and that changed everything for me. And I couldn't have it in my life anymore. Came out, was lucky enough to go on Leah Remini's Scientology and the Aftermath. I had an entire episode about my family's 70-year history in Scientology.
Wow.
And that changed my whole life. And now I talk out about it and make content and write books. That's that'll happen one day. I wrote a book. So yeah, that's me. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So nice to meet you. And I appreciate your giving a brief introduction. I know that's not easy. It takes me about an hour to do a brief introduction. Okay. So we're going to talk about the book. First, I just want to qualify one thing.
Yeah.
When I graduated with a degree in cinema from California Institute of the Arts, when I first entered that school, I was accepted in the design school because that was my background, and I had to prove myself because I didn't have a film background. So I have a very strong background in design. And the first thing I noticed about your book that struck me was literally the design. And I thought it was very well laid out. And at first I thought that all of the illustrations in it were decorative. And then as I was reading it, I noticed that they were somehow connecting me with something very personal in your experience, and that they weren't just sort of, some graphic designer's idea of how we could dress up a book to be in the motif of your particular brand. And I wanted to ask you about that, the way that you use these illustrations to kind of connect the reader with your narrative, because I thought it was really clever and insightful.
Yeah. Well, I can't even take credit for all of that because I had a friend who I met in a writing group help me with that, and she did design the cover.
Right.
But the cover has a lot of secrets. The green fiber is a throwback to the first Dianetic. The background is kind of fibrous. It's hard.
Oh, wow. I never even noticed. Stop. Give me a minute. Give me a moment. Wow. It's actually textured.
That's like the first edition of Dianetics. There's a little
Right.
Easter egg there.
Wow.
So the person who designed it has known me for 5 years, actually. And so it was a combination of her knowing me, knowing the story, and then she really put so much of this together based on our conversations.
Right. Because I really felt in reading it that these weren't just meant to be decorative, but they were actually these little icons that were meant to connect them. Did I make too big a deal out of it?
No, I love it. This is because the 1950s is when my grandmother got into Dianetics. The red hair, obviously the cannabis. So
right.
You're right.
Oh, is that what that is? No. I thought they were just roll your own. But anyway, yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I'm being silly this morning.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Is there anything else you want to say about the cover?
No.
Okay, that's totally fine. So let me see if I can remember why. I was like reading this and going, I'm tabbing that, I'm tabbing that, I'm tabbing that, and I probably won't remember what they are. So, like, the first thing that really struck me is you were having a conversation with the reader about these rules in Scientology, about like the 24-hour rule and the 2-week rule. And it's like, it was always, and what you said is perfectly aligns with my experience. But what you said about the, you felt you could smoke weed and then take a 2-week break. Like, I, you're like serious about that, right?
Oh, dead serious. Yeah, I had to really learn how to play within the rules that were given to me. There was no other way to play. So that was at the end. I was still being very rebellious by doing that, as you
Right.
know. But it didn't cut me off. It wasn't the final reason I had to
Wow.
go.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of took it as like she's joking. This is like the humorous aspect of Liz Gale, because she's playing with how ridiculous these rules are, right? Like you take aspirin and there's some 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
You smoke weed, there's a two. Like, how does this? It's not based on anything. So let me
Yeah,
see.
and it gave me the freedom to not have to go back to course or not have to do anything for 3
Right,
weeks.
but
Even though
you
I was
could
in
just
trouble.
right. You would just literally go, "Sorry, I can't go today. I just smoked some weed yesterday." You would literally do that. This is
At
unheard of. I
at
just
the
want to
end there.
underscore.
Yeah, at the end there, I was like, "Oh, sorry, can't come in.
Yeah, I smoked some weed.
I smoked some weed."
Yeah, I
They
tried
were
to
like,
do.
"Really, Liz? You're a problem." I was
Really,
like,
just
"Don't
just like
say."
that.
For a while.
Yeah. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, let me see if I can actually remember these. I might have to be original in real time if I can't
Uh-oh.
remember what these were. Okay, no, I don't think that's anything. I think that was just I was tired, and I think I sleep tabbed a couple of these pages.
Ooh, dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay, so you were. I'm curious. I knew lots of people that went to Delphi, and all of
Mhm.
them seem to have their different experience, and so many of them, like Craig Jensen's daughters and other people, wound up
Mhm.
in the Sea Org, that it was almost like this finishing school for
Yep.
Sea Org members. So how many of the kids that you went to Delphi with do you think ended up in the Sea Org?
At least a dozen, I'd say, and probably 2/3 to 3/4 of that were staff children. Like, their
Oh,
parents
really?
lived there, and that was really common because if you wanted your kids to have the best education, you would move to Delphi and work there, and your
Right.
kids would get tuition. So they were very dedicated Scientologists that did that, a lot of them.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, I know that. I mean, who did I know that went to Delphi? I knew David O'Donnell quite well. I worked with him a lot. I knew Sky Dayton, uh, for a long story, but I knew him really well. And so, with the exception of those kids who were, were obviously on different paths, a lot of kids upped and joined the Sea Org as a result of that.
Yeah, both of them, I think, Sky Dayton had the tech thing, and then David O'Donnell, I don't think he was ever gonna go in the Sea Org. I grew up a little bit with him. He was a good friend of my brother's, and
Mhm.
he had that charisma.
Right, right,
So,
right. Oh, you
um
mean he knew he was good looking? Is that what you mean?
yeah, there you go,
Yeah, okay.
dangerously good looking.
Yeah.
The thing that was a little different about the staff kids is that when we would go home, the boarding students would go home,
Mhm.
then they would have events and there would be really hardcore Sea Org. People would come there and, what are they called? Tours, and they would try and
Right.
get people to sign up, and their parents were usually on board. Um, so yeah, and there were other jobs too. There were a couple people who got hired as celebrity nannies. A couple, I think there were like 3 people
A
for John
graduate,
Travolta's kids.
right. Yeah,
Um,
because I guess the more you were indoctrinated, the more there was
mhm.
evidence, like evidentiary indoctrination, if you want to put it in
Yeah.
legal terms, the more you were accepted into these kind of more rarefied celebrity, the sort of rich bubbles. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the more I learn actually now about Sea Org life, I realize that Delphi was very much modeled after that. We had restriction. We had white glove. We had points for being tardy and absent, and that we would be restricted, which I have heard is something that happens to Sea Org members. We also did all the check sheets. You know, we were totally fluent in all study tech. We were fluent in all the ethics, writing OWs, conditions. We were just ready. If you went to Delphi, you'd be the perfect Sea Org candidate, and you would not have drugs in your system. You wouldn't have really consumed any negative media.
Negative media. What a nice way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you're up there in a hill, like in a bubble. So I don't know.
I was kind of surprised to find out that it actually used to be a monastery, but it's kind of fitting, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and I live not too far from here now, and there are several buildings like that. There was one that the last one, just their nuns are just leaving, actually. That was for monks or monastery. I don't know the right words. Delphi was for males, and then they have all this really kind of creepy old stairs everywhere, and like there's some old statues up there and stuff.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, you know, when I was, you know, because I worked at Gold, you know, I worked for the church for Gold and S&P, whatever, for a long, long time. And so my kids were, that's a whole nother story. You know, sometime I'll talk about the exposure that my kids had to Scientology and how absolutely negative it was, and how, excuse me, how I still am dealing with my own guilt about having exposed them that way, and how it contributed to destroying our family. I've been divorced for years, but I mean, there was also just my own interaction with my family, which was not positive. You know, I created a lot of chaos in my family, and a lot of that was because of Scientology. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. But I mean, you know, my kids were like, my former wife, fortunately, by the time my younger son was in middle school, she was done with Scientology schools, and they went to public schools, because our fear was that our kids would not be able to interact with the real world. They wouldn't know how to talk to kids who weren't Scientologists. And the kids become very cliquish, and they only want to hang out with one another, and they really start to see the other kids as well. So fortunately, my kids were put into, you know, public schools or charter schools or magnet schools or whatever. We did have them in Delphi, LA for a while, and I have to say, my kids are sort of the creative, like highly spirited bent, and we ended up having to take them out of there, because I went to a parent teacher meeting, one of these meetings one day they have with the parents. They bring them all in, and they sort of want to indoctrinate you about what a great place Delphi is. And on the board they had, you're going to have to help me with this, they had the Delphi model, and it was like knowledge, what was it? It was like KRC.
Knowledge,
leadership,
integrity is on there. Knowledge, education. Well, I don't know why I can't remember.
Really boring. Yeah, unfortunately you have. It's probably indicative of the fact that you're well deprogrammed from all of that. But when I looked at their motto and I thought about my kids, I'm like, wait a minute. My kids are play, imagination. They're about all these other things. You know, one is a musician today, one is a film editor, working, and we took them out of there. We both looked at that and went, no, our kids, no, you know, because I mean, they would be sent to ethics, right? All the time. And when one of my kids was 9 years old, I asked him, what is ethics? And he said, that's where they send you when you're in trouble. But that's like a kid's reality on Scientology.
Yeah.
You know, Scientology tells you ethics is the contemplation of long-term survival. But you ask a kid what ethics is, they're like, oh, it's worse than the vice principal's office when I was a kid, right? It was just,
it's detention. It literally is detention. They say go to ethics. They give you a routing form.
Right. You're going to ethics.
Yeah. And then you're writing up your OWs, which I find really bizarre.
Right. It's just horrible stuff that they do to kids. Let me see what so I found it just incredibly fascinating that you went and pursued a degree in early childhood education. Is that right?
Yeah, I first got my associates in early childhood education, and then my bachelor's in child and family studies.
Wow. One of the biggest lies that, like, I was not a big fan of psychiatry before I got into Scientology. That had to do with my own observations and personal experiences.
Hmm.
And having grown up watching motion pictures in which most of the villains were psychiatrists, right? So,
Oh yeah.
but that's not my, and obviously having been the architect and chief designer of the Industry of Death Museum, I was, an anti-psych warrior in Scientology, and I'm still very much feel that that's a field that needs to be reformed. But I don't feel that way about therapy and about the mental healing arts. I kind of see psychiatrists as witch doctors, and I see therapists as healers. And there's really a very profound difference between the two. But one of the biggest lies that was foisted on me, on all of us in Scientology, was the evils of mental health practice. And when you
Mhm.
actually get out and you start to meet some of these people and you start to learn some of the observations and you start to experience some of the care, the opposite of what Scientology says. Scientology
Mhm.
says that people in the mental health field, like therapists, will evaluate you, which is not true. They're some
Mhm.
of the least evaluative people I've ever met. The most evaluative people I ever met are, Liz, who are they? They're
Scientologist.
Scientologists. You are 1-1. You are this. You are
Yeah.
that. You are
Yep.
low tone. You are antago. I mean,
Um,
they have more labels for
yep.
people's quote unquote emotional state than anybody else. So when I discovered that you had actually pursued a degree, I was like, wow, I was really impressed by that. And
Thanks.
yeah, and I wish I've heard you speak a little, but I'd love for you to sort of contrast your experience from what you learn studying about behavior and development, which is part of the overall field of mental health, versus what you were indoctrinated to in Scientology.
Yeah. Well, Scientology has the answers for everything, right? They are supposed to have the ideal education. And my
Right.
brother was 4 years older than me, and he was very, very smart. And he was one of the first students at Delphi
Right.
because at a very young age, because Scientology apparently worked so well with him. And being a third generation Scientologist, um, we were actually in the newspaper. My mom called us fourth generation Scientologists, but I haven't found any
In other
proof.
words, they were Scientologists that came over in a covered wagon, right?
Exactly. Well, my family did come over in a
Yeah,
covered wagon,
right,
actually, to Oregon, but they
right,
weren't Scientologists then.
right.
But that's neither here nor there. So anyway, I grew up really believing and striving to be perfect, and at some
Right,
point I gave up on that and I was rebellious, but that was the standard. And my brother really did achieve that in a lot of ways through
right,
the lens of Scientology, because the
right,
lens of Scientology is children are adults in little bodies. And he really did do that. He sat for long periods of time and did really advanced studies, and he had held really high level conversations with adults, but didn't have a kid. Like you're talking about imagination. He
mhm,
didn't have a childhood as much as he might
mhm,
have needed. Um, so he unalived himself. I'm just going to use my TikTok language here.
right,
When
right,
I was 14 and he was 19. And that made me wonder what the heck had happened, right? Like, if everything I had learned was true, then that wouldn't have happened.
right, right, right,
So then that put me in sort of like, well, what did happen? And I was in a position where I had to go to school. I had to go to community college because I graduated at 14. I was 15 years old and I took a bunch of classes. I failed a bunch of classes. Um, I lived in the dorms. It was a whole deal. But I did take one of my first, what was it? I think it was anthropology. And we talked about human development for just a week. And 0 to 5 and all the different, like, everything that happens in a child's brain, in a child's
right,
in all the areas of development that I'd never even considered. The fact that, social emotional development is a valuable part of a human being and needs to
right,
be granted space just as much as physical development, or
right,
and then that can be broken down even further into like fine motor development and gross motor development. And it's
right.
just fascinating to me because when you just say, oh, adults are, children are adult, I can't even say it anymore. Children are
Right,
adults in little bodies.
right,
You're not giving grace to any of those developmental changes any of those baby steps that actually do go from a child who cannot hold their head up to an adult. And so that just really, really interested me. And
Wow.
I think we're always trying to save the ones we lost, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
sure,
I don't
sure.
know if
Yeah,
that's a normal
yeah,
thing. But now I have 2 sons, you know, that's the other thing. I had a child pretty early. I was 23 when I had my first child, and that was a whole new like responsibility
right,
because luckily I had my 2-year degree in early childhood development by then. So I had changed a lot of patterns and expectations already, but I still had the pressure of Scientology in my
right,
life.
right.
So anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. I guess it all is to say that like I just didn't want to make the same mistakes. I don't think it's not reasonable to be perfect. I don't expect my kids to be perfect by any means. But it's nice to know some ways to help them in their stages of development so that I can expect things of them that they can succeed in, and then we can like grow.
Right. Well, you talk about like the childhood development in reference to the brain and the brain growing
Right.
and so forth. And you know, many of our viewers may not be aware of the fact that in Scientology, if you're talking about the person in relation to the brain, you're going to be shut down because you're
Right.
then saying that the person is to some degree physical, and there is absolutely this 100% belief that you are not physical and that your brain has
Right.
nothing to do with it, and that it's really just some strange trick of the trillion-year-old psychiatric industry that you even believe you need a brain. I mean, and I'm not even
Yeah.
exaggerating. Like,
No, it's so meat body of me
yeah,
to
very
bring up.
meatball, exactly.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
lowbrow.
Yeah, you actually think that you need to attend to your child's brain?
Right.
Your
Right.
your child is an eternal spiritual being. I mean, the lesson, I was not a great parent, for a number of reasons. A lot of it had to do with Scientology. Although I love my kids, I didn't even know that I really wanted kids until I met my kids, and I think you
Mhm.
know what that's like
Yeah.
because you want your when you meet your kids, it's pretty miraculous. But one of
Mhm.
the things that I learned really too late, you know, I'm like the bachelor giving advice to newlyweds, right? But one of the things I learned too late is that the one thing that a child needs more than anything else is just to have somebody, a parent who says, I love you just because you're here, and I love you just because of who you are.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to say those words without choking up. And that's the thing that kids in Scientology will never have because they'll never be loved for who they are, and they'll never be loved just for being here because you're not really their parents. It's just sort of
Yeah.
worked out that way by some trick of genetics that as a spiritual being, they were delivered into your company. And your responsibility is just to make sure that they don't hurt themselves until they're
Yeah.
big enough to get auditing. And it's a pretty sad way to perceive your own children. So anyway, moving right along.
Well, it
So,
is it is quite detached. And
yeah,
I think that's one of the dangers of the generational indoctrination because I know
right,
a lot of people who were raised in Scientology that really did get some like real love from their parents. But
right.
a lot of those parents had a background where they were loved or they've experienced the value of
Yeah,
love as a child or they before they had joined Scientology they had beliefs instilled deeply. Um
right,
and those can be kind of etched and carved away over time by high level Scientology processing. But
right,
in that early childhood, that early childhood period, some of that is so important because you're bonding, you're learning your attachment style, or developing your identity. Um, anyway, so I just think like for me, third generation, it's just, yeah, it's sad to see love devalued in a
right.
long-term
Conditionally,
way. Yeah. And how it can just like deprive a human. Not cool.
right. And I think what you're saying is, if I hear you, is that some of these kids who did grow up in loving families, they they did so in spite of Scientology, not because of it.
Yes. Clearly,
Where
yes.
yeah, and where Scientology was through some of its more, shall we say, colloquial instruments, like
Right.
the way to happiness, uh,
Yes.
is saying this is the standard by which you need to raise your child. Look no further than
Right.
Scientology. Look
Right.
nowhere else than Scientology. So
And where
yeah,
they did have complete control, they totally screwed those kids over, right?
completely.
I mean, when they had complete control, they removed them from their family, put them in grimy conditions, fed them absolute crap, put
Right.
predators around them and in charge of them when they weren't, when
Mhm.
other children were in charge of them. And what,
Right.
an hour of
Right.
family time?
Right. You're referring to like the Ant Ranch
Sea
where
Org.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can 100% verify that. I mean, obviously, I was
Yeah.
never in the Sea Org, and I don't think that makes my opinion not suitable. I'm not suited to give an opinion about it. But I spent, I spent some time at the ranch when I was working at Gold. I knew, for instance, I met like a lot of these kids, like especially the younger ones, like Laura, who now goes by Laura FM. I think you know who she is. She's a wonderfully talented musician who's this crazy wild child, and
Yeah.
we all absolutely adore her. She's completely out. Not she's she's just very unrestrained and creative.
Yep.
But I remember Laura when she was a little
Fun.
girl. I'd spent some time at the ranch. We shot some films out there. So when I went out there, and I had I mean, I was pretty new working for the church back then, and I was one of those people, one of those public that thought, we were the smartest people in the world, and we were going to change the world, and we were
Right.
so idealistic. And when I would go out to the ranch, just to speak to what you were saying, these kids, it was like one of these pictures you see of Doctors Without Borders. They'd
Yeah.
go to an emerging nation, and there'd be this little African children, and they'd run up to them, and they'd all give them a big hug. And they would do that to me. And then I would think, wow, these kids are so, as we would say, high ARC. In other words, these kids were so full of love that, and they knew who I was. Laura told me later, oh, yeah, our parents talked about you. We all knew who you were. And so they would run up and hug, and they'd take my hand, and they'd lead me around. And I thought, wow, this is great. Look at these Sea Org kids. They're just so full of love. Then I found out that it was because they were so hungry to have an adult acknowledge them, that they thought maybe this guy will give us a little acknowledgement. Maybe he'll say, maybe our parents gave him a message for us. And I thought back on how completely cut off I was from what was actually happening, that, and that one day I was on a stream and Laura chimed in and said, do you know my parents, Phil and oh God, I can't think of her mom's name right now. But I knew them. Yeah, I knew them for 30 years, and I never knew they had a daughter. I never knew they had 2 kids. Like, how could you know somebody for 30 years and never know they had children? So
That's awful.
Yeah, it's a really awful. Yeah, and her parents are lovely people. Anyway, moving right along. I just have, you just triggered that memory
They're
in
lovely
me that, when you said, and then when they have a chance to care for kids, look what they do. Yeah, that's what they
look
do.
what they do, and they're completely in charge.
Yes, they were definitely completely in charge. But then, you have the kids who were slightly older, like Sterling and Mike Brown, and like they didn't have such a rough time there because they were boys. They were already rough and tumble. They, you know what I'm saying? And then they end up being stabbed. Of course, in hindsight, they look back and they know how horrible it was. There was nothing good about it. But if you were a little bit older and a little more sturdier, it might seem like summer camp for a little while until you ended up as a staff member at Gold, being recruited into the CMO, and being just utterly, having your whole identity stolen. Okay, so I love some of the quotes that you put in your book. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, no spoiler alerts. You're going to have to buy the book and read it in order to read the quotes.
You can read one. I don't mind.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
Maybe I will, but I thank you for the permission. But I'm telling you, the book deserves to be written, and so read. So I'm not going to be giving any of it away. While we're on the subject, I meant to bring a copy of it out here. I forgot. Have you ever read Cheryl Strayed? Have you ever read Wild? Have you read any of her work?
No, I have not read Wild. I know the story. I know who you're talking about. And I think that I actually did read her description when writing my description. Hers came up as a comparable
interesting
title.
Okay, the reason I bring this up, and I know this might seem a little untoward because I'm now talking about another author while I'm speaking with Liz Gale, but there's a reason that I'm bringing this up. I am a fan. I have a Liz Strayed mug here. Maybe you can read it. It says, "Write like a motherfucker."
Yeah.
So anyway, the reason that I bring this up is I'm a huge Cheryl Strayed fan. I've read everything that she's read. They did Hulu. They did a limited series based on a book she wrote, which was based on what do you call it? An advice column that she took over called Dear Sugar.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know if you saw
thinking
that
of
on
somebody
Hulu.
else. I was thinking somebody totally different.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
No, Cheryl Strayed was this. She was 24 years old. She had a horrible traumatic experience. She lost her mother. She became a heroin addict. She had serious sexual problems.
She trekked through the.
Yeah, she took
She
off
hiked.
and then she hiked
Okay.
1,100 miles of the
The
Pacific.
Appalachian Trail.
No, the Pacific Trail, right up
Oh,
to where
okay.
you live, right?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
She started where I live and ended where you live. So basically,
Wow.
1,100 miles took her 3 months. She walked out of the forest and she found herself. So it was kind of this incredible metaphor of like being lost in the forest and finding your way back home. And I read this book, and I had once, 22 years old, addicted to heroin, taken off, and I only spent 11 days, but in part of where she hiked, I had done that same thing. So I sort of felt this kinship and a huge fan. I mean,
11 days is a long time.
yeah, to not see or talk to anybody, especially when you're struck out on drugs.
Yeah.
But when you're 22, you're invincible and you're desperate, and
Yeah.
you're going to do something. So anyway, this all ties back to you. Okay, so I just want you. I want you to be patient for a moment.
Hey,
okay?
I love this ride. I love it.
Yeah. And so I became like very connected. I felt very connected to her in a little bit of the way that I felt connected to you when I heard your story on the Aftermath, right? And so basically, the Wild. I saw the movie first, and then I read about it. And Reese Witherspoon had basically bought the book before it was published. She took it to Oprah because she has this little empire where she controls.
Oh yeah.
She's a billionaire. She controls publishing. She controls movie making. She's really smart. I really admire her for what she's done. She took the book to Oprah. It became the first Book of the Month Club pick, right? Which put it on the map. Then they made it into a movie. It was nominated for Best Picture. She was nominated for Best Actress. You couldn't have, and then it was a New York Times bestseller. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm saying, Oprah, if you're watching, when I read your book, I was like, I had not read anybody who spoke in that kind of voice with that kind of bravery, who connected you to their own personal story in that way, since I had read Cheryl Strayed, and I'd already read all of her stuff, and I was hungry for more. So Liz, thank you for giving me more. That's kind of what I was wanting to say. Yeah, and if anybody from Hulu's watching, I'm serious. And if you're interested in a material, because Tiny Beautiful Things was a huge success, and and I highly recommend people watch it. It was absolutely beautiful. And then I started reading. I read the book and started reading all of her advice column, Dear Sugar, which is unbelievable. But Hulu, if you're looking for more material to do a limited series, check this book out. I'm serious. And I'm sure Liz would give you a really good deal. So anyway, I'm serious. Like when I read it, that's the level that I saw it in. It's not just you're very welcome. It's not just a Scientology book. It's truly a book about a genuine human experience. And I think that's why it could very well have mass appeal. So, okay, there you go. Enough about you. What do you think about the fact that I have a book coming out?
Let's do it. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. That means a lot to me. And I did want to, how do I explain this? I wanted my book to be sneaky, to be low-key smart.
Low-key
smart.
I get exactly what you mean.
Book. But, you look at the cover, or like Confessions of an Ex-Scientology Pothead, and it's a little sensationalized. And I really think that by the time someone was done reading it, they were on a journey and they learned something. And so hearing you say all that is just amazing. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah. So that's how I read books. Okay. So
I love it.
Yeah. And plus, I'm nearing the end of a journey of writing a book. Hopefully it'll be out soon. It's been, but mine is very different. It's a little more dense, and it's like, but whatever. It's not, what was the word you used? I love that. You said light. What was it?
Low key smart.
Low key smart. No, I like that. I like that. That's
I want to
fantastic.
know about your book. I want to know about it.
Well, it's very different from anybody else's book because we're all different. Everybody's, I mean, here's the thing about books that are written, in my opinion, by people who were in Scientology is if you think you read one and you only need one in that space, you're very wrong. Because
Right.
every one of these books is so different. You have, I mean, right now in today's world, Scientology is a worldwide crime scene. It's one of the reasons why I think there's so much interest, so many eyeballs are on Scientology, is because so many people are interested in, true crime. And Scientology is true crime, and it's happening in real time. And the victims are not just picking up pitchforks and torches and marching to like Frankenstein's castle. We're like taking them apart the way they got us in.
Right.
Very much through using media and using stories and using narrative, except we're telling the truth. So it's an amazing phenomena. I mean, it doesn't get spoken about enough from that perspective. And the media, I mean, I'm not going to tell you who's reached out to me because I can't, but people have reached out to me, and there will be more coming out about me and my story and my book and blah blah blah. But it's because it's like this crime scene, and it's like from that crime scene emerged things like this, and there's a lot of people that are interested in knowing more about that. There's the Never Ends. You've even streamed with some of them.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest,
that blew me away.
Yeah, the biggest segment of eyeballs that are on the Scientology. I'm just going to call it right now, rebranding it right here with Liz Gale. I'm rebranding the Scientology, ex-Scientology space as the Scientology crime scene. Okay,
there you go.
and the biggest section, the biggest cohort of people who have their eyeballs on it are not Scientologists. They identify as Never Ends.
Right.
They identify as people coming from other spaces where they have their own similar trauma. I've heard from, different story, same day. I've heard that so many times from victims of other cults. And there's the true crime watchers, and there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
They're a little bloodthirsty, but they're a little bit like a pit bull running after a meat truck. But,
there's a lot of meat here. There's a lot of meat hanging around in Scientology. So.
Exactly. That's why they're chasing it. So anyway, that's it. My point was, if you're, sometimes I yell because I can't hear it through my headphones. So
no, you're fine.
Sometimes I get really excited and I notice my audio device, the limiter, kind of going, we're going to quiet you down a little bit. So anyway, so yeah, what I was saying was, if you think you've read one of these books, and then you've read them all, you haven't, because they're all so different. I mean, I think I've read them all. I've even read the couple that I think were just total junk and shouldn't have been published. None of those are from any of from certainly nobody speaking out on. That was kind of nasty, but it just happens to be true. Anyway, that was my point. Now I'm just rambling on. So okay, cool. Let me see if I have any more tabs that are worth going into. I think I've kind of covered it. Talked about you mentioned a few things that were, you did get into some things that weren't directly your experience, like some of the past troubles of Scientology, Paulette Cooper, Jerry Armstrong. I think for your general reader, it's important to do that. And it's interesting because I'm trying to think, I didn't necessarily talk about them. I really tried to discipline myself to only put things in my book that I had personally witnessed or experienced. But then you also have to include things that are verifiable, like on Google. You have to. Like I found, you can't just disregard all that. It's part of bringing the reader through the journey, because you yourself, and I'm sure you'd agree, tell me you'd agree with this, that you hear about these things and you think, oh, those are just silly SPs. And then it's, suppressive people who are enemies of the church, who are making those problems or creating those problems. And then so what happened to Paulette Cooper? Yeah, I mean, but you got to realize what's in the balance, because Scientology, this is one of the things they do. is they create this illusion that of what is in the balance here, what lays in the balance. What lays in the balance is you versus your eternal spiritual freedom. So do we really care? This woman named Paulette Cooper almost went to prison. Hell no, we don't care. And then eventually your mindset changes and you're like, this is horrible. What was I believing in? So I did have a note there. So moving right along, I should have memorized these tabs.
You're fine. Paulette Cooper has a really big, her story has a really big place in my heart because to me, she's like the example of one of the first people in a movement or in, I don't know, who just really went to bat and took some of the hardest hits, you know, when it was just one person out there or a handful of people out there.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think about her when I see the little SPTV logo or I go live because if she hadn't have had, like, she was not believed by the FBI for so many years. Scientology framed her, made her seem insane, planted people in her home, like the most horrible psychological manipulation.
Had her arrested for a fake bomb threat.
Yes, they went to, what was it? They went to a bar, handed her a blank piece of paper, and then they got her fingerprints on it, then took it back and wrote on a typewriter a bomb threat to themselves, I believe, and then had pressed charges against the woman.
Right.
And nobody believed her. And that's the saddest part about it. And
and this was a woman who was a Holocaust survivor as a child.
Oh, yeah.
Lost her parents. I mean, this was
her story.
Then emerged as a warrior.
Wild.
They tried to shut her down forever.
I know. Well, and nobody believed her. And yet today, if I went to the FBI about something like that, I'm not saying they would just believe me, but there is a history within Scientology. There is a history of understanding that this is what they do because of people like Paulette Cooper. So every single one of those major, like I mentioned, the Cult Awareness Network, because you know, the Cult Awareness Network called Scientology a cult. Scientology did not like that, bankrupt them, and then bought the name and then endorsed themselves. And again, I'd say that's like psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, the Cult Awareness Network, there were some wonderful people associated with it who were really trying to do a good thing. But then also, you know, I hope I don't sound like an apologist for Scientology, but
the deprogramming and stuff.
Yeah, they did engage in some deprogramming.
They did.
There was some SA involved.
Well, they lost the lawsuit. I get that. Like, to that degree, fine. You know, if you sue someone and the court of law deems what they're doing is, you know, not right. But to go that extra step and then have Scientologists like take over their board of directors and then give them, like, on the low, and then give themselves a glowing recommendation. That's the twisted part.
The Church of Scientology is the Cult Awareness Network. I mean, I was there. I was in the room when David Miscavige was gloating about the fact that they bought the everything, the name, the office, the furniture. They bought it on pennies on the dollar. Yeah.
My mom was really proud of them. I remember.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That big victory. But I think the point here is the psychological manipulation. That's the point.
On like a corporate level, we're like, it's very villainy, right? Villainous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like
that. Exactly. With your like typing on your big money computer. I don't know. It's so bizarre. And those are the things. You know, the idea that when you want something from somebody, you ask them for something outrageously more. Have you heard of this tactic?
Yeah. The murder. It's called the murder technique. It actually has a name. Yeah. You're talking about the sec check technique, right?
Well, you like ask them. Yeah, exactly. And I think there's actually a real life sales technique also, something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of
and I think it's as a kid.
He didn't have go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, no. Well, as a kid, it's how you can also get something out of your parents.
Sure.
You're like, I want a brand new car. And they're like, no. And you're like, well, I need an old car. It's okay.
It's like I remember when I was, you know, just out of college and making a little money, and I just happened to walk into a Mercedes dealership because I just wanted to like smell the leather. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't going to buy a car. And this young guy, he's only a couple years older than me, in like an expensive suit. He came up to me and he's thinking maybe he could sell me this Mercedes. And I said, yeah, you know, I got a ways to go, you know, before I can afford this car. And he just looked at me and he said, you don't believe in yourself? Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh my God. And
What are
so,
you, yellow?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I never forgot that because it's such a prime example
It's
of,
powerful.
yeah, that kind of stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, unfortunately, I didn't have a retort for that, which
Right.
later I hadn't developed my skills yet.
And
Where
that
you
was the story of your first Mercedes?
no, 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 no. Yeah, exactly. I still have that car. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, I handed it down to my kids. No, but I hadn't developed my retort skills. Like,
Right.
now if that happened to me, I'd look at the guy and I'd say, "Why don't you just show me a car you can afford?" And
Ooh,
that would be the end of the conversation,
there
right?
you
So,
go.
so
Boom, boom, boom. Well, I think
yeah,
sometimes Scientology stories are like that. There are so many that are so crazy. To say somebody had a bomb threat and fingerprints on a paper and, the
right,
FBI is involved. It's so far on the scale. It's almost absurd that I feel like I have to kind of shoot those out there, especially to people that don't know it, because it expands like
right.
the picture, the
Well,
anti-Scientology
yeah. I
picture.
hope you don't think I was
No.
asking you to justify why you put that in there. I thought you were
No, I'm
perfectly
just telling you
okay,
why.
good, good.
How
Well,
dare you ask me questions
yeah,
about my
exactly.
book
Yeah,
on
that
this interview.
I'm challenging you. You never knew Paulette Cooper. What the hell are you doing? But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was not
No,
like
I
that
like
at
that.
all.
Plus, I actually am fascinated. I wrote a novel set in the 1950s about
Mhm.
a woman who joins a cult, and I did a
Right,
ton of research, a ton, because I was trying to connect dots of my family from the 50s
right.
and what all happened and what it all meant. And so I love all of the older history of Scientology.
Mm.
I think not only is it really important, but it's like spy movie stuff. It's very entertaining as well.
Yeah, you just reminded me. I should go back and watch The Commander because that was kind of that whole ilk, right?
Yep.
I never
The
watched
commander?
it. Was
The
it
master?
Master
The
and
master,
Commander?
yeah.
I'm very
Yeah, okay,
confused
yeah.
today. Yeah, the Master. I
Yeah.
started to
Let's
watch
watch
it,
that again too.
and I just didn't think it was a good film, so I didn't watch it. And people were saying, well, because they'd asked me, "Did you see The Master?" It's a
Mm,
way of teasing Scientologists.
yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I started to, but I didn't think it was a good film, so I turned it off." They're like, "Yeah, you're just brainwashed." I'm like, "No, no, really, I didn't think it was a good film. I
It
really
was
didn't think it was a good
disturbing. There were
film."
a couple of really disturbing scenes in that
Yeah,
movie,
I'm
as
gonna
I
watch it
recall.
again now that I
I'll
have
give it
you
give it a
recommend I watch it again, I'll bet.
I mean, I don't know, I should watch it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Have
watch
you
it
seen
again.
The Path on Hulu?
No, I didn't because here's the deal. I was told one of my kids,
Mm,
nobody in my family is in Scientology. My
mhm.
kids were bail like in their teenagers, they were like, "Screw this. This is ridiculous." And
Right.
then my former wife, she left 10, 12 years ago. I don't know. So like they don't have anything in my family that can hold over me. But my younger son was like, "Hey, did you see the Pat? It's exactly Scientology." And he's kind of like, um, doing his little digs and shit. And which was like it never even showed up on the radar that I was like PTS because my kids were in Tago because of who I was. It was like I had this position where I'm like they didn't want to get into it with me. You get what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Totally.
whatever. They didn't
Sounds like
want to
a
get it.
dream. I'd love to tease my mom. Remember that cult you were in?
Yeah, no, yeah,
Shows how
exactly.
far you've come. It's
Yeah,
great.
I exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, I still get a little bit of that because they're great. But anyway, my younger son, he was telling me, "Oh, it's like Scientology," and it's like, here's the deal: if somebody's going to make an anti-Scientology statement by way of a fictional narrative
Mhm,
film video presentation, I want it to be really good. And if it
mhm.
isn't really good, I'm going to be really critical of it. And I'd heard these things about the path that they'd missed too many things, and and I'd heard that all of these rumors that it was based on Scientology were false, and that the producers, the two main producers of the film, were constantly being asked this, and they were saying,
Mhm.
"No way, it has nothing to do with Scientology." Then later, after I left, I was contacted by an industry insider who was intimately involved with it and said they were told by their lawyers to give that answer.
Yeah.
That show was 100% based on Scientology.
Yeah.
Now I
You
am going to go back and watch
yeah.
that.
You should. I found it fascinating. I was under the radar when I first watched it, and I don't know what makes a good show necessarily, but I really love the family dynamics like
Right.
characters. So it definitely had that and sucked me in. Yeah, I was
Right.
so curious to see what you think of it. But they
Okay.
definitely, you can
Well, I'm
tell it's
gonna
90% Scientology, and then they interjected things that are just clearly not Scientology,
right. Right.
but it still makes sense.
Maybe we should do a watch party. Is it still on Amazon?
Let's do
We
that.
should get a bunch of us and do like the Path watch party.
Oh my gosh, either we're all gonna be talking over it or we're gonna pause it every 5 seconds because
I
it
think
is
both. I think we're
jam-packed.
gonna be talking over each other, and
Can
pausing it.
can we do that? Can we
Yeah, we
figure
can
out how to
try it.
do that? I
Yeah,
love
we
that.
can you can have up to 10 people on StreamYard.
That would be
So, yeah, it's
fun.
like Hollywood Squares.
I
But
love it. I haven't seen
yeah,
it in years. It really shocked me. And I remember looking up one of the writers was a woman, and I read an article. She said that she created a cult. Yeah, that it was not Scientology.
yeah, they were told by the
Mhm.
lawyers.
But they're doing these higher levels and they're called R, like you're on R9, you're gonna make it to R10. And
Yeah, and they had a
they do a lot
ladder
of
instead of a bridge, and the bridge
that.
really is
Mhm.
more of a ladder than it I mean, that's a more accurate
It is.
description, is a
It
ladder,
is.
because 'cause you're going
You're
up, you ain't going across.
Yeah, you're not really going across anywhere. I never thought about that.
Yeah, well, if you watch what is called the classification and gradation film, a film which I very proudly, was head of restoration, where L. Ron Hubbard himself explains the Great Chart. Did you ever see that?
Mhm.
They call it the class and grad film?
I've seen clips of it
Yeah, okay, you
because
know what
it's
I'm talking.
old and fascinating.
Yeah, he shot it at St. Hill, and it
Yeah.
was the first release of what they called the grade chart,
Uh-huh.
and he says that it's a bridge from a lower point to a higher point, right? So he
Yeah.
makes the up with his
Where's
hand.
that? Where's
Yeah,
that
to the
movement?
higher point. Yeah, well, you never get there. It's an
That's all
infinite,
the
right?
money he's gonna make.
Yeah, exactly. Over here is where the money is.
Yep.
This is your goal to get
Here?
there.
Oh, wait, no, the goal's here? Oh, wait, the goal's
Yeah,
here? Oh,
yeah,
wait, it's over here?
yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I didn't watch. I'm trying to
Awesome.
think. I watched all of the aftermath during lockdown,
Mm,
and my initial thought was, I mean, like I'd been at, like, here's how the conversation goes, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So, like back in the late '90s, when Scientology's reputation was pretty good, it was really good in the mid '80s and the
mhm.
late '80s. But in the '90s, when I was working for Golden, I would have to fly, whatever reason. I flew a lot on business, different places, for the church. And you sit down next to some person, and they'd say, "What do you do?" Because that's what you do on airplanes, right? You talk to
Right.
the guy next to you. And I
Mhm.
said, "Oh," and I was really out front. I was like, "I direct films for the Church of Scientology," and the person would say, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." And it would
Mhm.
be like an invitation to talk more. And then
Right.
that got to the point. I think the last time I flew to St. Hill, sometime in the late 2000s, somebody asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I direct films for Scientology." And she practically got pushed the buzzer and got the steward, in flight, the person to come and like move her seat. Like,
Mover
she's like,
seat, yeah.
sit next to this guy. That was the end of the conversation. So there was a really remarkable change there. But here's how the conversation goes.
Interesting.
Somebody says, "Oh, you're a Scientologist. Did you see? I watched that show, that Leah Remini show."
Yeah.
And then you have to answer. You have to say, "Oh, interesting." And then they say, "Well, what did you think of it? Did you?" And then you say something like, "Well, that's just a bunch of angry apostates who were all kicked out of the church." The
Right.
standard. Yes. And then they say, "Well, did you see it?" And then you're stuck. You're really stuck because
Yeah.
you can't say, "Well, no, I watched that show." And if you remember, that Liz Gale character in season 2, episode 3 or whatever, well, let me tell you the real truth about her. Right. Right?
Yeah.
There's no more
No.
conversation. And
Yeah.
so I remember I was on my way out, and I said to a friend of mine who I'd gotten into Scientology, and I really wanted to help this person out because they're about to do their OT levels, and that is
Mm,
really damaging to your mental health. Let
yeah.
me, as long as you stay in the matrix, as long as you stay in that bubble, you can have the apparency of surviving well while becoming an OT. But you are literally, with each step on the bridge past clear, you are
Yeah.
literally trading a piece of your identity for a fake narrative that doesn't exist. And by the time you're OTA, you do not know who you are. But as
Yeah.
long as you stay in the bubble of a bunch of other people who have this false narrative, you can kind of survive. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to help this person out. And I said, "Hey, listen, somebody's going to ask you if you've seen the aftermath, and you're not going to be able to answer, and that's not okay. So if you really believe in Scientology, you'll watch it. And I
Right.
was telling her,
Yeah.
what Scientology should do is they should create a fact pack. What would they call that? Like a dead agent
Dead
pack.
agent pack. Yeah.
Right. Like to kill the agent of the chaos agent who's
Right.
whispering in your ear.
Right.
And they should hand it out, and they should all watch it, and they should prepare all Scientologists to be warriors. Because I thought, yeah, let's figure out a way we can get them all to watch it. Because once you watch it,
Mhm.
the miracle of the Aftermath show, Leah's great contribution was that it's irrefutable truth. I mean, and I watched it, and I'm like, I know a lot of these stories. I know
Yeah.
these people. I
Yeah.
know what happened. And you're done. Like, you're done with, if you're a Scientologist and you watch that show, you're done, because it's too much ice water in your face of
Mhm.
truth, right? And once the cold wears off, you realize it's very sweet tasting, the truth, much more so than any of the BS. Anyway, all I was trying to say was what quote unquote anti-Scientology stuff I've seen. Obviously, I watched the Aftermath
Mhm.
a couple times, actually. And I didn't watch The Path. I didn't watch The Master. I watched the Vow, which was kind of related to Scientology,
Mhm.
because Keith Raniere was, as I describe him, he
Mhm.
was the laziest cult leader in the history of cult leaders. He's because Hubbard, Miscavige, these guys work really hard.
Right. They're
These are,
hustling.
oh man, they're hard work. They ain't never going to
Just
jail.
copy and paste.
Yeah. Raniere was just like, take a few things, get the girls to like me. Whoops,
Yep.
I ended up, I don't want to go to war with the IRS and become a religion. I mean, that's why he's in jail. So yeah, no offense to any of the people that have left NXIVM, but it's just like, sorry about it. So yeah, I'll go back and watch the Vow. Anyway, please, Liz, help me take over.
There
I'm
you
going
go.
full
Well,
ADHD here.
I actually tried. I had a few conversations with my mom at the end there, and I did try to use some of the similar logic. Like,
Mhm.
what's the point of doing all of the, excuse me, the PTSSP course and becoming OT and going through your grades where you can talk about what is grade 0? You can talk about anything at any time, any topic
Right.
at any time. So it never made sense to me, why Going Clear was the first one that I said all of your non-Scientology family or friends, people in town, like they're going to watch it. It's a blockbuster. Don't you want to know what is in it? And I had read the book on the down low as well. So, and she was just like, no, it's all natter. It's all natter. And you
I'm
and I
sorry to
know.
laugh.
I know.
It's like my laughter is a trauma response.
Believe me, I might have laughed at the time. No shame. Because natter, as we know, is talking critically about something. But the caveat of
Right.
natter is that you do not natter unless you yourself have done something
Right.
first,
Right.
basically. So she's like, no, they're all nattering because they all committed a bunch of overts. They're all terrible people. We're talking about the people in Going Clear, some of which I think were on Leah Remini's show. I'm not really sure, but just whistleblowers, people speaking out.
Yeah, I think Tony was.
Yeah.
A few of them were on there. So.
Well, and then of course Marty Rinder did us all. Marty
Rathbun. Yeah.
Sorry about that one. Whoa.
Sorry, Mike. We know the difference.
My bad.
Yeah. Well, they
anyway,
were good friends once.
That's true. And I said, well, how can you tell the difference between nattering or delivering I'm going to get kind of Scientologies here. I'll explain it in a second. But
sure.
I said to her, how can you tell if someone is nattering or they're just doing their liability and they're just delivering an effective blow to the enemy of the group? What is the difference from where we're sitting? So if you're in lower conditions, you're in trouble in Scientology, or you've made a big change, right? You did a doubt formula and you decided, let's say, to join a different group, you're going to work back yourself up to prestige in that group. And one of those steps is delivering an effective blow to the other group. I'm not explaining this very well, but Why wouldn't that look like?
You're doing great. Keep going.
Thanks. Why wouldn't that look like somebody, and also in Scientology, there's something called ethics gradient, where first you tell somebody like, oh, you need to change. And then you go through these very specific steps and you do this and this. And one of those steps is talking badly about somebody in front of other people.
Right.
So
Right.
all these things together, like, oh, well, they're all just nattering. All these,
Right.
all these SPs, they're all just nattering. Well, what if they're not nattering? What if they are actually using Scientology? Because that's what she could accept. Anyway, I went nowhere. Clearly, I did not change anybody.
Yeah,
in
no, yeah,
Scientology's
of course
mind,
not.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was
And,
brilliant.
yeah, and there's also, this relativistic viewpoint when it comes to ethics. For example, my good friend Dan Sherman, who passed away last year, who was a very important person in the church.
Yes.
He wrote speeches and made millions of dollars.
Sherman speak. Yes.
Sherman speak. Yeah. Also known as purple prose. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but if you want an exact specific description of Dan Sherman's writing style, go to Wikipedia, look up purple prose and read the definition. You go, oh, they wrote this about Dan's.
There you go.
Hold on one second.
You gonna look it up? Yeah, Sherman speak is the like silly term.
Yeah, could
for
you
it.
hold on one second? I gotta just let my dog in, okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
He's being fussy, but go ahead, tell
You're
them.
fine. So he would do these events and he would be a public speaker and he would be just talking these gigantic words and just building things up so exponentially and really not saying anything. It's quite an art. I'm not sure if I can do it, but it'd be something like, welcome to the extraordinary, extravagant. We're going to go over the top. Nothing microscopic around here. It's going to blast to the top. Okay, now he hears me. He's like, what are you saying? And he would just very over the top. Lots of words, I tried my best there. I'm
sure you did fine. I'm sure you did fine. Thanks. Yeah, it's very, very, very flowery. Very trying very hard to be poetic, very significant, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, my point about the relativism in ethics was Dan was a quote unquote good friend of mine. You can't really have friends in Scientology because a friend is somebody you can confide in, and you can't confide in anybody in Scientology. So they're not really your friend.
It's sad that is the case. We've had a laugh about it now, but I have a young childhood friend who sent me screenshots of her writing OWs when we were 9 about her nattering about me and writing up like KRs on me at the time and KRs on our other friend. Well, because you know how 3 friends are and 3 girls when you're 10 years old, it's a constant just like, but all of that was written down and put in our folders.
Oh yeah, like it goes like this when you're a kid. So and so is an asshole. This is true.
This is true. Yeah.
So,
they stole they used my pencil and I didn't say they could. And then they have to like make amends.
Yeah, exactly. But what I was going to say about the relativism is that I used to chide Danny a lot about his language, right? Like, there was the drinking game, the Danny Sherman drinking game, where every time he said "moreover," you would take a drink, right? Because "moreover" was his favorite phrase. And then he'd do these silly little things, like once describing Hubbard being thrown out of Zimbabwe, which it was Rhodesia, and he described him as, "I've trained my dog that when I'm streaming, he can come to me for treats." So it's really a bad habit. He's like a little addict now. He's like, "Oh, you're streaming. I can like bother you and you'll give me treats." But anyway, he was describing Hubbard being thrown out of Rhodesia, and he described him as having been exiled. And later I said, well, wait a minute, that he couldn't have been exiled. You can only be exiled from your own country. He was clearly deported. Right? That's just a definition of words, which Scientology. I said, Danny, you messed up, because he was deported. And he's like, yeah, but I can't say he was deported. Exiled sounds so much cooler. So it's like, truth be damned. So I was talking to him one day and he said to me, I write these David Miscavige's speeches to make him seem smarter. Now that's natter. That's what we would call in Scientology natter. And so, but I wouldn't write that up. I just laughed and said, whatever. Because if I wrote that up, I would be attacked.
Well, and he would have been sec checked and they would have found
no.
They wouldn't have
bothered him. They wouldn't have bothered him.
Oh,
No,
he's
no, no, no.
above it
Scott, he
all.
would have gotten off scot-free.
Uh,
He writes, he can write an entire 3.5-hour event in 2.5 weeks, and then that makes the church millions of dollars. So no,
wow.
he can be a drug addict, which he was. He can be all kinds of things, and
Wow.
yeah, he had really severe rheumatoid arthritis, and he
Mm.
got addicted to opioids. I know this for a fact because I helped him get off of them. But no, it's relative. Like it's relative. It's like Segway, Danny Masterson,
Mm.
right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like somebody goes to the church and says, "Hey, this guy did this thing to me, and it's a crime,
Right.
and you need to do something about it." They're punished for bringing that forth, right? It's a lot of people have reported the fact that it's an internal Scientology crime to report other Scientologists or law enforcement,
Mhm.
but it's actually the same crime to even threaten. Like if you go to
Yeah.
the ethics department and you say, "You handle this guy or I'm going to the cops,"
Right.
that's no different than going to the cops. You're still in the same amount of trouble.
You're still in a lot of
Yeah.
trouble
So
for
I was
sure.
just trying to make the point about the ethics, this quote unquote
Mhm.
ethics and justice system of Scientology. It's relative to how well you're doing in the eyes
Right.
of the church.
I think and how well almost you can defend yourself against the church
Well,
in
if
some
your
ways. Like,
statistics are really good, you don't have to. That
yeah.
is your defense,
Well,
right?
I could imagine Danny throwing a fit and winning and being like, "I've paid this much money and I'm this big TV
Yeah,
guy," and then being like,
sure.
"Oh, yeah, and my mom
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
Carol,"
yeah.
and throwing his name
Yeah,
around.
do you know how
But
much money I make to church? Yeah, that would be the argument. And
exactly,
then
and
you
then
could
it's like,
pull out a
"Oh."
38 and wave it in your face because
Right.
he
Exactly.
used to do that a lot
We
and get away with
submit,
it.
we submit. The thing that's been really interesting for me about the Danny Masterson case in particular, is I think it's really highlighted the fact that we know that there are people who are abused in Scientology. I think that's
Right,
become glaringly obvious to
right,
everybody. But there's a
right.
certain kind of perpetrator that's also created in Scientology. And I'm trying to
Wow.
kind of figure out what that is. It's not just Danny Masterson. It's not just Danny Masterson's generation or socioeconomic background. Like,
Right,
I know in my family there were crimes of, I don't want to say a similar nature, but like as an assault nature that
right,
were covered up with Scientology too.
right, right,
And I know several women now who were teenagers who, because they were those adults in little bodies, really had some inappropriate relationships with older people, and it's really not that uncommon as
right,
a cultural norm in Scientology. Even my
right, right,
cousin's daughter, she got married at 16 to a 24-year-old. Where'd they meet? Oh yeah, Church of Scientology. Her mom, when she was 13, dating a 30-year-old. Where'd they meet? Oh yeah, Church of Scientology. So, and that's not even those are all consenting. I mean,
right.
consenting for,
Yeah, right, right,
however you want to word that. So I guess the thing for Danny Masterson is how much is Scientology, by covering up and enabling these things, how much are they almost creating more of a monster and what obligation did they have or do they have to report those things at that time or not practice Scientology on those people, etc. Because this is just gonna keep happening. Like there are the crimes, there are more
right,
crimes.
right, right, right. Unfortunately, the truth is coming out about that. I mean, my own, you said you
Mhm,
don't know kind of how it happens, like what is the core cause of it. I
mhm.
think Scientology very much teaches people to be narcissistic.
Oh, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, like
Mhm,
when you talk about a religion that basically convinces you, grooms you to believe that
mhm,
the day you set foot on our premises, you believe that you are nothing and you believe that the universe is infinite. We're
mhm.
going to show you that the opposite is true.
Right,
You are infinite and the universe is
right.
nothing. I mean,
And you are God.
yeah, and you're a god. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is in a book called Scientology 88008. It
Mm,
literally describes what I am saying,
yeah.
literally.
Mhm.
It's not I'm not making some figurative abstract statement. And I
Right.
think that leads to a lot of very problematic behavior,
Mhm,
especially when all of your relationships are transactional. Like
mhm.
they have to do with who you
Yeah.
are, they have to do with status.
Mhm.
Scientology is a very status driven culture. It's driven by
Yeah.
money, it's driven by your position on the
Yeah.
bridge, on the grade chart, what level
You
you've
buy
aspired.
statuses at
Right,
IAS. Like that's all you're
right,
paying for is a
right.
freaking
They even
trophy
call them
and a
status.
status.
You need
Yeah.
to up your status today. And then you have this really bizarre phenomena called the Sea Organization, where all you have to do to be super special and to be a god is join the Sea Org. Like,
Right.
like, so
Love
the
bombing.
most artless person, the
Mm,
most artless public person in the church public joins the Sea Org, and the next day they're in the in crowd. They're super
yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So, and all of a sudden everybody else's opinion doesn't matter because
Right.
they're just public and I'm in the Sea Org.
Right.
Forget the fact that yesterday I was, bullied. Today I am a bully.
Right.
So, it's
Yeah.
it's like, what? It's a
I
really
know.
crazy. So I think in that mix, you get this kind of entitlement that
Hmm.
then gives people license to be able to commit these things and
Hmm.
with impunity. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
whatever. Like, I have a lot to say about this.
it's the true believers, right? Like,
Right.
and another thing, yeah, I've been thinking about this. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ruby Franke 8 passengers case scandal. Do you know anything about that? Um,
No,
she was a YouTube blogger mom, and she
so many,
recently
oh
was
yeah, I know that, but
arrested. Yeah,
so many scandals, and
no
I'm bad
worries.
with
Yeah,
names.
no, but
Yeah,
if
she
you
was the
remember,
super mom who turned out to
yeah,
be super evil.
exactly. And it's funny to see her doing things in the name of being right. Her and the
Right,
therapist she worked with, Jody Hildebrandt, that they were doing these really harmful and painful things to children in the
right,
name of helping them. And it's just such an
right,
extreme. There was also another woman of a Mormon spinoff cult who unalived her children because she thought they were like demonically possessed
right,
and she was
right,
helping them. And it's
right,
it's fascinating to get in that particular headspace. And now that I've left Scientology, I don't want anything to do with that headspace. I never want to be so sure about
right,
something
right,
that I'm willing. I don't know. It gets very dangerous. It's a dangerous place
right,
to be in
right.
the
It
mind.
is, and it's only going to get worse. I remember when I was working on the base when Miscavige was still up there because he blew out of there in 2013 because he was worried about. I
Mhm.
mean, his message to me personally was, "I ain't never coming back here because too many people fucked me over." But he was also worried about an FBI raid because of the whole human trafficking. And let's face it, when you abuse that many people, you kind of maybe become afraid that whatever word replaces the word postal, because we don't use that word anymore, that one of them is going to completely become unhinged and
Yeah.
find a gun and just take you out. But where was I going with that? But oh yeah, so back in the days when he was there a lot, and I'd bump into him a lot. Something would happen like Heaven's Gate, where all these people unalive
Mhm.
themselves because they were going to go hook up with this comet and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And he would always get really pissed. He's like, they're going to say something about Scientology, like they're going to
Oh,
confuse us. It always was a thing, like, when,
yeah.
Heaven's Gate or the other one, the Branch Davidians, because
Yep.
then the press starts conflating these different
Right.
cult groups. And Scientology, they're not a doomsday cult. I mean, they act like one because they put their shit in nuke-proof vaults, but they're
Yeah.
not a doomsday
I
cult. And
would
they're
argue that Scientology is a doomsday cult
okay,
to a
good.
certain degree because they have some like policies and letters that L. Ron Hubbard wrote that
Right.
really stress the importance of this lifetime, that we're not going to
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah, but that's for money raising. That's not because anybody. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's for
This
money.
is my side of the argument, Liz.
It's a
That
money.
that is
I would say it's money raising if you
okay.
were a grown man reading it. If you were
Okay.
11 and you were reading it, or you were 13 and you were reading it,
Right.
it
Of
was
course.
real.
Yeah.
So
Yes. 100% agreed.
I always felt like they put such an urgency and stress on this lifetime. I mean, I get it now because obviously
Right.
that's what you
But
have. You got to give up this lifetime and sign a billion years because,
okay.
I
Okay.
get it now. But
Yeah.
I think it was really used to get people to join the Sea Org and to get people to give up money. Like, it's just money now. We got to do this. We got to do this big planetary clearing thing. And I always did kind of wonder if L. Ron Hubbard just left his body. I wondered if we ever would be called. to like go to Project 2.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that as an 11-year-old child. I mean, again, that's one of the real tragedies of, as you call it, the generational indoctrination.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you end up with, because you're not
Right.
going to get that happening to kids. But I can tell you, as a sort of a person who was pressed into
Right.
marketing,
Of course.
yeah, but as a person who was pressed into marketing, I can tell you that a marketer's two most powerful tools are scarcity and urgency. Buy
love
now
that.
while supplies
Yeah.
last. Okay.
Yes.
So when you're talking about all of that stuff is nothing but marketing. Maybe you believed it,
That's
just
true.
like I believed the TV ad when I was 5 years old, where they were trying to show up packaging was convenient. So
Yeah.
mom crumpled it up and went poof, and it disappeared.
And it disappeared. Yeah.
To an adult, that they can't do that stuff on TV anymore.
Right.
But to an adult, that meant, oh, that's a convenient package. But to a kid, that was magic. Mom, go buy me that. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, children are affected very differently by these things.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up, because the concepts like scarcity or supply and demand
Right.
are so important, I think, to teach children, because that is one of the most common, like
Right.
sales is
Right.
one of the most common forms of coercion. And
Right.
once you can start to see the patterns in those things, then you are, I mean, nobody's free from cults. You think they can't get you,
No.
and then that's when they get you.
Right. No, the people that say, I can't
Right.
believe you guys were so stupid to join a cult. I mean, all I have to say to them is, maybe you were just too dumb to join a cult, because
There you go. I had a great
Yeah,
time. No.
don't attack me for that. But there's a lot of smart people in Scientology.
There are. And I think a lot of people in my family have a lot of smarts
Yeah.
in a lot of ways too.
Well, you don't even have to argue that point, because
Yeah.
you have hardcore evidence to back that up. So yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah,
where
I
we're at
guess.
now.
I wasn't
Yeah.
really thinking about him, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but no, it's a fact. I mean, he was definitely an outlier, but there's a lot of outliers, a lot of very talented, smart people in Scientology. And
Yeah.
the ones that aren't anyway, I don't want to impugn Sea Org members, but it does take a special kind of a mindset. I feel particularly bad for kids. I mean, they're not really recruiting kids anymore. I don't think they don't go. They used to try to recruit my kids when they were like tweens, but I don't think they won't take kids anymore unless they're 18 and have a high school diploma. It's just
Good.
too problematic. So one
Yeah.
of the things that I wanted to, we got off on we touched on the Danny Masterson thing a little bit. I knew Danny a little bit. I mean, I did a thing with Mark. I'm doing this thing with Mark Headley about our time making tech films, and we did a film with Danny Masterson, and we've talked about that. He was 15 years old, whatever. That I knew him, I knew his family, but I'm not really speaking about it. You've done some wonderful work on it, but I wanted to ask you a question. In divorce, like when the divorce happened, do you mind if I ask you about this?
It's fine. Go ahead.
No, yeah, yeah. Wait, thank you. Do you remember when the divorce first hit the news, when Bijou first filed for divorce? Everybody was like, aha, she's done with him, right? It was like, she woke up, she saw the light, she's done. And then when I looked at it, and having been divorced in California and being hit with spousal support, and I was and having read stories about these unfortunate married couples who one of the partners became tragically ill, and which is like being put in jail for the rest of your life, is to some degree like a tragic illness. Like you're never going to get rid of it. It's going to redefine your life. And the expense that they were going to have to incur for treatment, because, health delivery in America is horrible, not health care, but the way it's delivered, that they would then have to get divorced in order to maintain their assets through the treatment, so that they wouldn't go bankrupt as a couple. One of them would go bankrupt. And having read about that and having my own experience, people don't realize, like, okay, I'm going to ask you a question now, Liz. I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't live in California, but just generally speaking, how many divorces do you think involve alimony, which is a misnomer for the term spousal support? What percentage do you think of marriages are dissolved and have alimony or spousal support as a condition?
And legally, it's defined as separate than child support. You're asking me.
100% separate. Child support is a given.
I'd say like a 25%.
That's a pretty good guess. 5. Okay.
Oh, even less than I thought. Yeah.
5 to 10%. It's a very rare thing. People think it's a big thing because they hear about these high-profile divorces, right? These celebrity divorces, blah, blah, blah. That's all they ever hear about. Most divorces end in, I'm done. We're going our separate ways. You're going to support the kids. I have a job. I don't want your money. That's it. They're done.
Well, because California as well tends to split things rather evenly unless you have a prenup or you. Yeah. So once you've separated things 50-50, I can only see, aside from children, pretty rare situations when you would need, have spousal support.
Yeah, and when they do award spousal, California's cut and dry. Somebody made a comment that the Bijou's divorce filing cited irreconcilable differences. Well, I got news for you. Every divorce filing in California says irreconcilable differences.
Yeah, particularly ones in jail where the person is in prison. That is that's very common.
Literally, but there is no other reason. You can't state any other reason in California because California is a no-fault state.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
If you don't, they won't let you say anything else. They won't let you say because my wife cheated on me.
Yeah,
they're like, it doesn't matter. We don't care. It just does. None of that matters. You're not going to get more property because of what the other person did. You're not going to get nothing. California is like, they just cut everything. Community property. Both parties have to file a what's called an FL-150, which is a financial disclosure. They have to put everything on there. They can't hide anything. And then the judge looks at it and he says, "Are you guys cool with this?" And one of them could say, "No, I want her to have everything." The judge would be like, "Okay, fine." Like, it's what you agree on. But if you're just not agreeing, they're going to just take the baby and cut the baby in half. All of the property, the American Express points that you both earned when she was out, on expensive shopping sprees, those are, everything's going to get split, right? And then in some rare cases, one of the partners can say, "Well, I want spousal support," right? And the judge, both people have to say how much money they make. Like, let's say both people are making $100,000 a year. Then there's no spousal support because then they would each get $100,000 a year. Each person gets half of the combined income. Now, and this is important to the Danny Masterson situation. When a marriage in California, and I'm assuming they were married in California, when a marriage in California reaches 10 years, the subject of spousal support cannot be overlooked. The judge has to account for it. Even if he writes 0, it still has to be on the document, right? And so when the marriage is dissolved, the judge can determine, either party can ask for it's called terminated spousal support or reserved spousal support. So either party can say, "Well, I want the right to reserve. I want to reserve the right to come back later and ask for spousal support if my circumstances change. Like, I get my legs get run over by a train track and I can't work anymore, whatever." Or you could say either party can ask for the possibility of spousal support to be terminated, which means under no circumstances can the other person come back to me later and ask for spousal support. And if that is granted, then the door is closed on that. They lock it. They throw away the key, right? So here, I'm going to just bring this up here. So Bijou Phillips, not only did she seek spousal support from Danny, but if you read this article, I have a link I've sent to it somewhere. I think I might have sent you the link. If you read the actual article, not only did she seek spousal support, but she also asked the judge to terminate any possibility that Danny Masterson could ever ask her for support. And everybody is saying, well, they're just trying to protect their assets. And I'm just asking for somebody to explain to me, how does her seeking spousal support and asking the court to terminate any possibility of her ever supporting him, how does that fit in with some scheme to protect their assets? I don't understand that. To me, this is like, F you, rotten hell. This is not, because, I mean, this woman, she has no connection to Scientology except for his family. And honestly, I don't think she thinks that family has done her any good, right? Because they certainly, they're the ones that sort of delivered up this situation, allowed it to happen, because this situation could have been terminated a long time ago.
Yeah, they definitely.
Anyway,
contributed to make it worse. Well, so when the news first broke of the Bijou divorce, there were definitely two camps off the bat. One saying finally she's done with Danny Masterson. You know, she waited only. There were 2 trials she sat through by his side. She wrote a very compelling letter to the judge on his behalf, calling him a life-saving partner. Only days before it was like 7 days or 10 days later that she filed for the divorce. Now, what I was looking into is the custody is not very surprising because when you're in prison, you're not going to get custody of your child, especially for some violent crime. To me, the spousal support, because I'm curious, when you look up their net worth, it's anywhere from $8 to $20 million, but they're combined because they've been married for so long. Now, I do not think that she has rights to Mamas and Papas. I don't think she has, that was her parents' music. I don't think she gets a significant royalties from those. She was in a couple of TV shows, but as far as her income goes, we also haven't seen her working because she had kidney failure and then she had a kidney transplant. And so Danny had established at that point that even though in 2018, when he was fired from the ranch on Netflix and he, there was a couple other things that kind of cut him loose, he is probably still bringing in quite a bit of money and will probably continue to have money brought in even though he is in prison. Right now, from my understanding, with the civil suit that is coming into play, if they are still married and the amount goes past, essentially, I'm going to make this really simple for myself, but past Danny's half of the assets, it's going to come out of Bijou's, like Bijou's going to pay for this, right? If she's still married to Danny Masterson. So a lot of people are saying that this really is just simply so that when he is sued, nothing comes out of her pocket. Now, that could be the case. However, there were a couple of things that were really strange. They tried to say, it seems like her lawyers tried to say that Danny Masterson had not been living with her since 2018, because when you look at the actual filing,
I think they said separated.
Well, they had said they listed 2 addresses. They listed a 2014 address to 2018. Now, the reason that they moved was because Danny had to he sold several properties. Like he had to liquidate in order to pay for his legal fees.
Yeah, he tried to transfer one into Bree Schaefer's name and did all kinds of shenanigans.
He did all kinds of shenanigans. I'm glad that you said that, though, because that actually just put a light bulb in my head about something else.
Which, the Bree thing or the spousal support thing?
The Bree thing. Yeah, the Bree thing. Anyway, so all this is to say, right? I don't think we can ever really know her true intention. However, there are some
no, but we're not here to adjudicate her true intentions. We're here to have a conversation.
Yeah. Did you see in the tabloids? She had some pictures out not that long ago where she's a couple of days walking around town with a crystal book, right? Like a crystals energy book. I think it just recently came out. It might have been today. I'm not sure. I'm fixing to do a TikTok about it, but I found it very interesting. Now, do you find
Scientologists doing crystals? Wait a minute. That's, boy, you get kicked out for that kind of stuff.
She's literally walking around a public place to the point where the book was photographed and then the cover of the book is in the article. So whether this is a planted media move or not, but it's these little tiny clues that I am what I'm calling Team Bijou. Maybe I'm Pollyanna here, but I have an idea that perhaps after 2 rape trials and sitting through her self-expert testimony about what consent is and what assault is, I do not believe that Bijou Masterson had a chance in hell of ever learning what consent was, or that when you're in a relationship with somebody, you cannot force yourself upon them. That is assault. You know, there's these basic human rights that I don't think because of her history she ever knew or ever learned. And sitting in that court, she would have had to learn some of that. So I truly think and hope that it's not an assets move, but that her assets are protected.
Yeah, no, I 100%. I guess I'm on Team Bijou. I'm because
I don't know,
because I looked at this whole thing and when it was first announced, and everybody went, she's saying F off. And I went, no, she's protecting assets. And then this story came out about the spousal support. And I said, no, she's not. She's protecting herself and her daughter.
Yeah.
She is done with this guy. You know, when they showed this picture of she was like cozying up with, I don't know, Chris or Jordy, I don't remember.
Jordan Masterson, I believe.
Yeah, to me, yeah, I knew him as Jordy. But to me, that was like that mafia kiss, right? Of like, I'm done with you, mother effers, right? Like she was like leaning into his ear. It looked like it was like it was intimate. She's like done. I mean, personally, I'm going to go out on the line. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to just say, in my opinion, is she's done with him. She's going to take as much money as she can get out of there. She doesn't care if he rots in hell. She's done with the family. She's going to leave Scientology because none of those things have done her any good in her life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, and I don't care about this guy that gave her a kidney. Like, I don't care about that, you know. And people come up with the most ridiculous reasons why this is not the case. But what about her wailing scream? You know, when he was convicted, she was like, "Oh, your people describe this thing," and I'm like, "Yeah," because she was realizing she was going to have to raise a daughter by herself, and that she was on her own. That's what the wail was about. It wasn't about that her husband was leaving. She probably can't stand this guy. Anyway, that's just my own personal feeling.
Well, I'm right there with you, to be honest. I mean,
okay, well, then we should argue with somebody else because we disagree, right?
I don't think that you're going to get much debate out of me, but I do think what is really, really interesting, and I don't know if she sees it, but she's actually set up for success right now. She really could. She could use this as a platform to, you know, advocate for women's rights. Like she does not have a good reputation. Bijou Phillips
she's known as a bully.
Reputation. She has been
accused
of
reputation in Hollywood as being a bully. I mean, she was practically fired from the film Bully because on the set of the film Bully, it has been reported that she herself was a bully.
Yes. And there've like been situations where she's been in physical altercations with people. And the thing is that if you take
everybody loves a girl fight. No, I didn't say that.
Well, she was like the epitome of the wild child in the 2000s when all of us like when I'm 40 now, when I was being wild, it was just pre social media. Like a little bit of my wildness got on MySpace, but for her, she was in the tabloids. So she's
your agent.
Well, she lived alone in like with endless money with a car service at 14 in was a model for Calvin Klein. I don't know that anybody, I'm surprised she's alive. All this is to say, I think she really could be onto something if she came out and she was like, "Oh, that's what abuse is." Oops.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, look at Kim Kardashian, what she made out of, you know, she's a chub with a sex tape, and she turned that into a $60 million empire, a month empire. So it's like, I'm sorry, I body shame.
No. You see that tape? It was hot.
What's that?
Did you see that tape? It was hot.
No, I actually never saw it. I've seen a lot of. I'm not trying to hide anything about what I've seen.
A lot of them. I've
seen all of them. Them videos, but I missed that one.
Just that one, the one that started it all.
No, but and I'm not going to suggest we do a watch party because
let's not do that.
Let's not do that. No,
sure, I think the Kardashians are more litigious than Scientology.
Say that again.
I think that the Kardashians are more litigious than Scientology.
Yeah, likely. Yeah, very likely they are. They probably don't have as good a lawyers. But so we agree on that. And I hadn't thought about that, but she could actually, but in order for her to pull it up, she'd actually also have to do some soul searching and become a good person. I mean, if she actually did that, if she had a real come to Jesus moment, she could be a little bit of a force to contend with. I mean, she could step out on social media and say, look, you know, look, here I am, like meet me newly. And it could be, I mean, I would watch that. I would at least take notice of it. But
well, especially if she had like a counselor with her or a therapist with her.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she definitely.
Yeah, a therapist who didn't have an Instagram account.
Right.
Yeah.
And she does. Hopefully, she has a different publicist than Ashton and Mila, because
You think?
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, okay, cool. Well, I think this has been an absolutely fabulous talk. I'm going to get onto some of these comments now.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions for Liz or I, please. Whoops, I meant to get that out of there permanently. Yeah, just write question before the question. We got a couple of super chats here. Atypical Paul says, Liz, would you do a video talking about PTSD from religion, cults, and tips for getting through it? I have severe CPTSD. Sorry about that. I have a little bit of something. And agoraphobia. Sorry, Liz, go ahead.
I could, for sure, Paul. I would definitely not be coming from a medical standpoint, as we both know. I feel for you, and I could give you a couple tips right now that helped me. Number one is to be kind to yourself. I don't know if you struggle with this, but Scientology had some nasty loops in my mind, and sometimes you have to just take a break from those. And is even if you don't want to leave your house, try to connect with other people online and see if you can form a community for yourself that you feel safe in. So if I can help you with any of those things,
Great.
I hope that helps.
So you know, Liz, thank you, because I am noting those down for moi as well. So thank you very much.
Of course.
So, and here we go. Ati Haju says, love you both, Bitch and Liz. Thanks for doing what you do. You're very welcome. Yeah, that's really sweet. Thank you for being here. I mean, I think you can agree, Liz, this community, it's an amazing thing. I mean, I have more friends now, like legitimate friends, people that I trust, that I can confide in, people that I have a shared emotional experience with, than I did in decades of being in Scientology. And I've never been in the same room with most of them.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
Well, it is. And, in Scientology, a lot of times you get solutions, right? It took me a long time to realize that friendship doesn't mean telling somebody all the time, like, oh, this is what you can do to fix that problem. Because that's how it is in Scientology, right? Like any negative emotion, anything is just like, oh, there's a fix. We'll get you in tone, put you in present time. Yeah. When I find in this community, sometimes when I'm struggling, there's people hold space for that too. Right. And I didn't experience that in Scientology. So that's been a really nice surprise.
No, I listening to you say that, I am reminded of the phrase, there's a reference. There is a reference.
That's how you know it's true?
Well, no, it's just that I say to you, I'm being really obtuse here. Forgive me. I'm like in telepathic communication with myself, period. No, I say to you, I'm having X problem, and you say, oh, there's a reference, meaning a reference to an L. Ron Hubbard reference, and then you pull it off the shelf and open it up, and you say, here, read this. And that suffices for an interpersonal exchange.
That's right. And that wouldn't be because I'm being lazy as a Scientologist either. It would almost be easier for me to say it to you, but I would not want to set you back with verbal tech. I would want you to have it from the source, because as your friend, that would be the best way for me to solve your problem, help you solve your problem.
Right.
It's just misguided.
Thank you. Emma Demastri. Hi, Mitch and Liz. I'm a huge fan of both your channels. Thank you. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you for all you do. Mitch, please give The Master another chance. A phenomenal film. I will.
Maybe that should be our first watch party.
Yeah, we could do The Master as a watch party. Yeah, that would
I'm going to cover my eyes for like 3 of the scenes, though. A no watch party.
Okay. Right. Welcome to our blindfolded watch party.
That's right.
Okay, great. Let me see what else I got in here. I'm not really good at managing my own questions.
No, you're fine. I didn't star anything either. I was just
I didn't either, but that's fine. At least you spend more time looking towards the audience than I do. I'm horrible at that because, like I said, I'm working off my iMac, which is over here. I have a DSLR that I'm streaming from, which is over here, because I'm all about having, the right lighting and camera, because having come from gold, I am a gear Nazi.
There you go.
Okay. So
fully left Scientology when you show up with a white background and fluorescent lights.
Oh yeah, no. When I start using the camera, my webcam on my iMac, and I'm just wearing like an undershirt and
Yeah.
and earbuds.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just spilling the tea.
Okay. Well, at least I know how I can. At least I can. I'm laughing because I'm sorry. There's a lot of funny comments here. They're not necessarily appropriate.
I like that idea.
Okay, Goldie put up this thing. What does this say? I trust it. It's from Goldie. Please take a moment.
Glad. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Liz.
Can I speak to this quickly?
Please,
Because
no,
I feel so bad that
I
forgot that I didn't put this in my video the other day. So Marilyn.
Here, I just did it twice. Once for you. Okay.
Marilyn has started this petition, and it is to have, I don't know who, the IRS, I want to say, investigate Scientology. And so I think with all of our channels and everything, I think we could get some pretty big numbers on it. I could pass it around TikTok. I think it could get some far reach.
Okay, this is to the chair of the Congress Committee on the Ways and Means. Okay, so I am assuming that
I'm wrong about where it's going.
would be a governing body over the IRS. So
I can pull it up here. Stop Scientology from using our tax dollars to subsidize abusive practices and crimes.
Is that? Do you have a link to that? If you shoot me the link, I can put it up on the screen.
How can I do that?
Oh, just go to your Googles.
Or just let me. I'm so confused. I don't want to share my screen though.
Don't worry about it.
Because I was watching stuff earlier. No, I'm just kidding. That's
right.
I'm scared. I almost promised myself I never would because of what happened to Erin.
Oh, you mean what happened to Reese?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that went really badly for her. She got monetized in 2 days and started making $1,000 a week. Yeah, that was just horrible. But
I guess you could look at it that way.
No, I don't look at it that way. I look at it that people have struggled to leave the church, and she had a bit of a rough time. And Erin did a phenomenal job of coming to her rescue and helping her and platforming her. So I'm not. If I came off snarky, that's because I am, but it's not who I really am. Okay.
I get it. I wish my exit had been that easy.
No, I'm not snarky. I just play one on YouTube. So
it's from Marilyn, who does Coffee, Cults, and Crafts, and her husband Duncan.
Right.
I'll just read it. It says Scientology has been accused of committing covering up crimes and abuses for decades, all the while hiding behind their religious tax exempt status granted to them by the IRS in 1993. Talks about lawsuits. Congress, the IRS, and the U.S. law enforcement need to take notice and investigate these allegations. Sign this petition. So I guess I don't understand where the petition is actually going.
Well, it's going to the Congress, to the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, as I understand it.
It's got 942. I think if we should get around 50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So here, let me just Marilyn, by the way.
Yeah.
She is, for those of you who don't know, Marilyn identifies as a never-in. But she's a very supportive and outspoken critic, supportive of the anti-Scientology movement. She's an outspoken critic. She's one of these never-ins. She's part of I can't say brotherhood, I can't say sisterhood. We don't have a genderless pronoun, the theyhood.
There you go.
Okay. She's part of our theyhood. Okay.
There you go. Tribe.
But yeah, tribe. Okay, great. I guess that's the appropriate word. But she has a YouTube channel, and I just want to shout out to her. So I'm not afraid to share my screen.
There you go.
So here, let's here it is. Just can you see this? Are we getting this? Yeah, this is her channel. And I suggest you go there and support her. And
she's a lot. Oh no!
Bless you, Liz. I think you need to go to ethics because you are obviously not PTS. Yeah, not doing well. Yeah. Anyway, that's Marilyn. We love Marilyn. She's
Me too.
incredible. Hashtag Marilyn, where's my syrup? So that's it. Yeah, she lives in Vermont. She promised some syrup. So
Some
anyway,
syrup.
yeah, she
Funny.
makes syrup. So yeah, that's the deal. That's a really exciting program. So
Yeah.
again, I'm just gonna real quick put this up. I mean, it says, yeah, okay, great. I think I did my due diligence on
Your due
that.
diligence.
Uh,
I love Marilyn. I love her to death.
yeah, I can't say enough about her. Oh, this says, I don't think it helps to have non-Americans signing the thing. I think if you're not a voter, they don't give a crap about you. So, and not that you aren't worth a crap. Don't take that the wrong way. Because you definitely
Nobody
are, but
cares about your signature. Get out of here, Ryan. No,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
super
No,
kind
I
of
mean,
you to ask.
if you're a member of the U.S. Congress, you're like, wait a minute, what district are you from? What's your constituency? Oh,
Right.
nice to meet you.
We need a lobbyist.
Okay. This is from my friend Selena Cramore. Not
Cute.
me being delulu and assuming that Mitch is using gender neutral terms specifically to make me personally happy. No, I hate to disappoint you, Selena, but no, that's not the case. It's not that I saw you in the chat and I'm all of a sudden gonna, knock off all the he she stuff. But I will say,
You're
and
very
I am saying this.
powerful, Selena.
What's that?
She's very powerful to have this effect on you if it was the case.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think Selena, good point, Liz. Yes, Selena, I will not surrender to your power. Okay. But I will say that Selena, by the way, is an activist in the LGBTQ plus space. She's also she runs a cafe. Do you know about her, Liz? Are you familiar with her? You should check her out. She runs a cafe
I'd love
in
to.
Wales.
Oh,
She's
okay.
from Wales, from a lovely little town. And I saw a documentary about her on the BBC. And Selena, you should send me a link sometime so I can share that documentary. She is definitely neurodivergent. She raises money from the Wales Arts Council to support artists in the quote unquote, the neurodivergent space.
I
And
love
she has
that.
this really lovely cafe, like a coffee shop, like one of these
Oh.
artisanal handcrafted, and it has like a
Mhm.
chalkboard sign on the front of it, where they usually put the daily special, and it says autistic owned. And I just, okay, that power did kind of sweep me off my feet. So
Got him.
yeah, exactly. We've become friends. She is really terrific.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, she's great. So yeah, and Selena, you should send me a link to it's called the Aubergine Cafe, I believe.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just like you want to go live there. Liz, it's like in Wales, and it's in this beautiful little like place, and it's like
Sounds like a
super.
writer's paradise. I just want
Well,
to
she
drink my
keeps she's like
coffee
invited me
and
to
my
come and take a writer's vacation there, but I don't trust her. I think she's trying to traffic me to Wales. So
Depends how good her pastries are at the cafe. Might be worth it.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, pastries and human trafficking. They don't. Okay, I don't know why I brought this up. Goldie said probably not. And Sandy Yerkin's powers because BFG and Mike R were totally infested last night. I guess maybe infested with BTs. I don't know, but they did a great show last night. I got to tell you.
I couldn't watch it. I'll have to give it a whirl.
Yeah, they did a really, really interesting show. So let me see. I think we're just about ready to wrap this up. Susan B says hello. Mention Liz. Hello to you.
Hi, Susan.
Oh, here it is right here. If anybody's interested, Goldie, is that? Wow. Oh no, I thought that was the link. Sorry, Goldie. Get that woman's link. Don't let her out of the chat. Okay. That's
There's
me.
a power play happening here between the two of you.
That's my toxic masculinity speaking. If anybody's never seen it, there it is.
We'll have to check back in several hours and see which one of you is still confined to this chat.
Wait a minute. Goldie says I did post it. Where the
She
hell
all
is
caps
it?
you too. That
Oh
sounds like
God.
this.
Oh,
I
hold on,
did
hold on,
post
hold
it,
on. Is this
Mitch.
it? Is
That's what
this
that
it?
sounded like.
Selena's channel. Okay. Hopefully, the documentary. Selena sent me a link to like a short 10-minute BBC documentary about her, and she does some wonderful work in the activism space. So this is Emma. Hi, Mitch and Liz. The House Ways and Means Committee oversees
Oh.
all taxation. Very powerful committee that could investigate COS tax
Oh,
exempt status. So,
brilliant.
I didn't really take civics because I went to art school,
I
and you
know.
grew up in a cult.
I
But you
did.
went to
An anti-government cult, though.
Yeah,
I still get weird about the government, guys.
Well, you're not the only one.
I still don't
Well,
know.
I did these articles that Hubbard used to write under the heading of freedom back in the 70s, just
Mhm.
prior to Freedom Magazine. That's why they have Freedom Magazine. One of the articles is called Unconstitutional Government.
Oh, yeah.
And I turned that article into narration and made it into a film that plays on the Scientology network. I'm going to play it at some time and do a reaction video. Maybe I'll invite you on.
Yeah.
We could both react to it because you're but it's anti-government in different ways than I think you are. Because you're not like you're like I don't want to get political. You weren't at the January 6th rally, were you? You didn't storm you weren't one of those people that stormed the White House, were you, Liz?
No comment.
Okay.
No, I
Okay,
definitely
yeah,
was.
please
I
do.
definitely was not there. I stay out of trouble. I keep my
Yeah,
nose
I only
clean.
know of one Scientologist was there, but you were out of Scientology when that happened. Okay.
Do like a good, protest, a good scuffle, though.
Yeah, especially one
I'll
that
catch the next one.
yeah, exactly. At least virtually. Okay, the Holy Rogue has a question for Mitch. Your comment about autism made me think you have a connection to it. Sorry if I'm wrong. Well, I'm friends with Selena, if that's what you meant. Yeah, I don't know, but if I'm autistic, I would proudly admit to it. I've never been diagnosed as that. My therapist doesn't think I'm autistic, and because we've talked about it. And some of the most incredibly creative people I know are autistic, so I don't have a problem with having that as a label if it's true. And one of my kids accused me of being autistic because supposedly one of the qualities of autism is the inability to judge correct behavior in social situations. I'm not totally sure if I've said that right or if that's just some weird bias. Liz, you may know more about this than me.
I think you're funny because I think you just said your kid just dissed you.
Well, no,
and I just think it's funny.
Oh, I get it. No, one of my kids.
But not by saying you're autistic, but by saying you were like socially awkward or whatever.
Yeah, like because I once made an inappropriate comment about my son's girlfriend, and later he said, "Jesus, you're like autistic," but maybe he was just saying that like a slur, which wouldn't have been okay. Using mental health to shame people is not good.
That's never a good thing. But kids. I think we all have somebody in our lives who has, whether it's diagnosed autism or some sort of neurodivergency, or their brains just operate a little bit differently than ours. Isn't that a little bit of the spice of life? And yeah.
I mean, I think I'm sorry. Selena, go away. So
For real. Are we calling out our conditions now?
Not that, yeah, exactly. We're
our diagnoses.
Yeah, we're going to start diagnosing each other. Selena wants you to
My
know
list is really long.
Yeah, she says ADHD, ADHD though, Mitch. For real. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Selena. Now get out of here. No, I wouldn't have a problem. I think I would have a problem being identified as neurotypical, more than I would have a problem being listed as neuroatypical or neurodivergent or whatever, because who the hell wants to be neurotypical? That just sounds
feels like a lot of pressure.
I'm sorry, that's really funny. It's a lot of pressure. Yeah, because you have to what? You have to uphold the banner of normalcy, I guess. Is that what
I
you
guess
mean?
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just being like, oh, being the standard of some sort of development. Look, if my brain
Yeah.
development is anybody's standard, then the bar is way too low for humanity. Like, we have very serious issues.
Yeah, I think you might want to put that as a quote in your next book.
There you go.
Yeah.
My next book. I'm like opposite cult leader. Cult leaders are like, listen to me. I have all the answers. And I'm like, don't.
Yeah, I'm the last
Don't
person you
listen to
should
me.
listen to. But people, she's the first person whose book you should read. Whatever you're reading now, when you're done with it, read Liz Gale's book. I'm telling you, if you don't agree with me after you read it, send me a bill and I'll pay you back for her book. I'm
boy.
serious about that.
Oh boy.
Okay, so Goldie says there's a protest at Scientology Celebrity Center at 5390 Franklin Avenue on 1021, which is yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. I actually had to look at the calendar. I did not know about this. Liz, did you hear about this one?
I didn't. This is the 4th protest, though, that I have been hearing about. So I guess we're ramping up for something.
Yeah, and people have no idea the effect that the anonymous protest had on Scientology. I was on the inside. I was like working to sort of counter all that stuff to some degree. Some of it I thought was just hysterical. Funny enough that it should just be left to exist.
Right.
So Alyssa Fleck says, thanks, Goldie. The protests would be important, I think, for getting more anti-Scientology coverage into the mainstream media. It's picking up so much steam. It makes me happy. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the one on, yeah, I think it's important. I think the more these happen, and let me see what we got here. I think we're just about.
I hate thinking of a party happening without me. I'm already having FOMO now about all of the protests going to happen.
Oh, Purple Groovy 69 says, Liz, I type in all capital letters because I'm blind and soft-spoken sometimes.
Because I read out Goldie's all caps. Well, Purple Groovy, the perception over here is not soft-spoken because you have all the caps, so you're nailing it. I hear you.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a question I just want to share. George Matthew says, Selena, you're in or very close to Cardiff, right? 50 pounds, right? 50, what? Seems to be on the low side. Okay. Wow. I should not have put my foot in that. That's kind of I don't know what's going on with that. But I think Selena
50K seems really low.
Say it again?
50K seems really low.
Yeah. 50K what?
I don't know. I'm full of shit.
I think, you know what? I think she made the same offer to him because Selena sent me a text that said, you know, Mitch, because I was complaining about my rent. I can't afford it anymore because of the strike and whatever, and wasting my career in Scientology. But she said, you know, you can move to Wales and buy a house here for 50K. So she must be like handing this out to different gentlemen, the same request. So
she sounds like a cult leader. See, I knew something was going on, Selena.
She might be.
What's your cult like? You need any women? I'm in. Been looking for one. Yeah,
Sunflower 71101. Just be kinder to yourself, Mitch. Don't take on board other people's shit. I try not to, except for my dogs. I pick up after him constantly.
That's good. That's responsible.
Yeah. Okay. So I do. I pick up actually other dog owners sometimes. Sometimes if they're small, like my dog. You know, if they get into the really big poops, I don't pick them up. Oh, you need to leave soon. I'm keeping you too long. I just realized. Don't you have an out with your kids? No,
that was a brilliant segue. I just think that was a really fun little thing that just happened.
No, I just remember.
I'm not super late. You can keep talking about poop if you want. I'm here for it.
Okay, so enough about me. What do you think of my mental disorders? That's Mitch, thank you. I have
a great pair.
Yeah, thank you. I have my own conditions such as schizoaffective disorder, oppressive type. Well, my thoughts are with you, absolutely. And you know that you find your way. I hope that you're doing okay. believe me, this whole idea. I have a lot of problems with the idea of diagnoses of mental conditions because I think, and I'm not trained in this at all, but I think that all problems people have mentally all stem from one thing, which is trauma. I think everything is where you land on a spectrum based on a bunch of different factors, based on what trauma you experienced.
Right.
So it's kind of like, life is traumatic. I mean, Buddhism, and I'm not preaching Buddhism, but it talks about how life is suffering and about how the greatest lessons we have to learn in life they exist where our pain is, so it's like you're likely learning a great lesson by being that aware of where your pain is coming from.
Yeah. It's hard lessons.
Sorry?
Those can be hard lessons.
Yeah, but it's harder not to learn them. Okay, cool. So we have a super chat here. We're gonna end off shortly because I keep thinking about your kids. You have to pick them up from school, right? Something.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna leave them at school too long doing this live. We'll be okay to go.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. No, because I think about that.
No, I gave myself a buffer. We're
okay.
good.
Good. Yeah, because you could just like
screw those kids. They're fine.
Yeah. You got to toughen them up a little bit. I mean, you can't baby those kids.
Who doesn't appreciate getting forgotten by their mom after school for a couple hours?
Walking home for 5 hours. Okay, Gary Sanchez, thank you for the super chat, Gary. What are your thoughts on LGBT issue and bigotry, particularly those who spread it on social media sites? This is like a whole nother 2 hours. This is like where do you even start?
I think we all agree that bigotry, just by definition, is never a good thing, right?
Because it doesn't matter who it's aimed at or what inspires it.
Yeah. And I would say, for those, and this is probably a question for you, but, for those who spread it on social media, now that I've been creating content a little bit on, TikTok and YouTube here and there, it is really interesting the conscious choices that we have to make about the messages in our content going forward and like what we want to say and what we want to spread. So isn't it unfortunate that someone would use that energy and time to spread anything hateful? That sucks.
I mean, one of the most, in Scientology, I think you'll agree, we compartmentalize because we take a thing like, okay, one of my favorite examples recently is like Mark and Claire Headley, who I knew at the base, and we were friends, and I really liked Mark a lot of working with him and so forth. And then his whole thing happened. And then, so, in one box, I've got Mark's this cool guy. We were in the trenches together. We had a lot of fun. That's in a box. Then there's another box. Mark is an SP. He's left. He's now an enemy. And you have to like put these things in boxes and then you have to close them up. And then, of course, then I left and the Mark is a cool guy box opened up and, Mark is a cool guy popped out and the Mark is an enemy guy. That box just kind of vaporized. But you really do. One of the things that I had to compartmentalize was the church's, their attitude and Hubbard's teachings about homosexuality. And that was really something that was, that box was just bugged me. I would have arguments with staff members about like literally CERC members about, they'd say, I'd say, well, why do you think it's bad? Well, because if everybody did it, the race would cease to exist because nobody would procreate, right? That really stupid argument, right? Which is completely ridiculous. They don't know about the baby factories in whatever it was, that science fiction, whatever. I've had neighbors who were lesbians who had a child, whether it was by in vitro or they adopted, it doesn't matter, but there's all kinds of reasons why gays can have families. And statistically, they do better at raising kids and fewer of their kids actually become gay, not that that's a bad thing, than straight families. So, if you're like a conservative straight person and you don't like gays, well, go look in the mirror because it's your demographic is where most of the gay kids come out of, right? I don't know how that works. But I said to this CERC member who was actually my assistant for years, I said, well, let me get this straight. So you think that it's bad because they don't have kids, they don't procreate, and so therefore it would be the end of the race. I said, well, I got a newsflash for you. You're not allowed to have kids in the Sea Org. So in terms of procreation, what is the difference between being gay and being in the Sea Org? And that argument was just like, and I never got in trouble for it, but amazingly enough. But that was one of my favorite ones to throw at them if they ever brought that argument up.
Right. Well, yeah, they're not doing much for the population then either.
No,
you know,
they're gay. You might as well be gay. If you're in the Sea Org and you're not having kids, it's not any different than being gay. But now we're eating into your buffer, so I'm going to do a couple of more super chats. Wait, I got this one here. Well, we did that one, okay, and then
wow.
Hey, that's very generous. Thank you so much. I've never done a super chat, but here's my first. Praise Zeno and down with Scientology and little Dave. Thank you very much. That's very generous of you.
So generous.
That's fantastic. Alyssa Fleck, big shout out.
Right?
I wish I had something to send you, like a book. Send me an email. When my book comes out, I'll send you a book. Maybe Liz will say, I don't want to speak for Liz, but definitely if you send me an email for that, I will send you a book.
Well, look, yeah. And look at the next one too. She sent another one.
Oh my God.
So I can buy some weed.
This one is for Liz to buy herself some weed.
Who
is this girl?
I know. What's happening?
You rock, Alyssa Fleck.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah, you totally rock. Anyway, this is an amazing community.
I love that. Oh, thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah. You know, I don't think we can top that. I think we're done.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we're going to sign off now. Liz has got to pick up her kids, and my dog's looking at me like he's going to take a poop on my foot if I don't take him for a walk. So Liz, this has been a fantastic. This has like exceeded all my expectations.
Oh, I had a great time.
Oh yeah, me too. So happy to know you and to do this. And we'll connect at some time on that watch party because that might be a thing worth doing. So,
that sounds good. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, until next time, we're going to go out with a little message from my dog. Bye-bye. Oh!